interesting article out of the New York Times walking through the planning behind the scenes of the Biden camp about the campaign that Biden will run in 2024 if he indeed announces his run for re-election. Seems to be the case. That's absolutely going to happen. And some interesting things were in this article we'll discuss. Forget the Wilmington basement. This time he will have a rose garden, an Air Force One, and a big white mansion, and all the other advantages of incumbency in a year when he is not forced by a pandemic to stick to streaming from downstairs. But as President Biden prepares to run for a second term, his team is mapping out a strategy for 2024 that in many other ways resembles that of 2020. So 2024 might look a lot like his 2020 campaign. Whether he ultimately faces Donald J. Trump again or another Republican trying to be like Mr. Trump, the president plans a campaign message that still boils down to 3 words: competent beats crazy. Whether he can sell that theme again represents a singular challenge given surveys showing that the public has not exactly rallied behind him and harbors deep doubts about his age. When Mr. Biden kicks off his re-election campaign this spring, as is widely expected, he will be the oldest president in history, but one of the lowest rated in the modern period, presiding over an economy that is improving but unsettled and leading a party publicly behind him, but privately angst-ridden. And rather than Mr. Trump, he may yet face a Republican challenger closer to the age of his son. And there is so much beyond this that we could get into, but for the purposes of this segment, we'll stop there because that highlights the point I want to discuss. A campaign that is centered around what we saw in 2020, competent beats crazy. And if that's Trump, I do think, if he's against Trump, that will be a successful message, because we've seen Trump, we've seen the type of candidate and governing individual that he is, and I do think the American public will buy into the stance that, okay, you may not love Biden, you might be concerned about his age, but number one, here are the list of accomplishments that have gone through under his leadership, and competent beats crazy. And it does seem that in the midterms that message worked, because a lot of the election denying really radical MAGA candidates lost, and a lot of that was because of them, not necessarily because of the quality of the candidate on the other end. Now, a lot of the candidates on the Democratic side were good, but the center of what I see as the reason that these candidates did bad was because of how bad they were, how radical they were. And so I think talking about 2024, it makes sense. I think it could be successful. If it's DeSantis, I don't think that message will be successful, unfortunately, even though I think you and I might see DeSantis as crazy. The American public hasn't been convinced of that. I'm not sure, because he can talk a little bit more like a politician, which unfortunately a lot of people will judge that to mean he's more reasonable, which he's not reasonable to say the least. But I think Trump's still more likely to be the nominee. So Biden preparing this campaign message, it still could work. But what this also brings to my mind is the conversation that has to be had on the Democratic side that, listen, competent does be crazy. And the Democratic Party is quite competent compared to the Republican. But that's not going to be the case forever, meaning crazy is not going to be on the other side forever, hopefully, unless crazy wins, which is fascism. But crazy hopefully won't be on the other end forever. And so what should be done now is, yes, say Biden's the adult in the room when you stand him next to Trump, and that's good. But also, what does the Democratic Party stand for? Not just stand against, but stand for as well. Because moving forward, once Trumpism gets significantly weakened, once hopefully MAGA becomes a movement of the past, which may not be happening so soon, but eventually, what will the Democratic Party by itself be standing for? And then the reason I say that is not just for the future. Stand for that now. And the Biden administration has done some good things, so highlight that. But then understand that we honestly could be doing so much more if the Democratic Party was united around some of these incredible policy positions that have been pushed for. And so I think you could have an incredible campaign if a strong Democratic candidate stood against the Republican Party and stood for things that by themselves, even if the Republican Party was not crazy, would win elections. And then you combine those two things and you'll definitely win elections. And that'll be the best for the American people. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.